Oh. Oh. Hello humans, my name is Dael Kingsmill, and a while back I did a video that was focused on house rule ideas that I had stolen from around the internet in various places to use in my own game. A collection of ideas that predominantly were not my own and or weren't long enough to make a whole video about. But what was really heckin' cool about that video was that I asked for people to leave their own house rules or, homebrew bits and pieces that they'd stolen from around the internet in the comments section, and it became this incredible repository for just ideas, creative ideas to use in your tabletop RPG game. RPG game? Oh no, the tautologies, they got me. And there were so many cool ideas from within those comments that I liked and wanted to steal that I finally thought, why not do a part 2? So here's some more stuff that's worth stealing. The OMG James left a comment with an idea that I actually have stolen and used within my game. Ooh! James calls it Rumours and says that they stole it from Will Wheaton. I've certainly seen other variations of this house rule sort of thrown about on Reddit. But basically each player comes up with rumours to do with their characters' backstories, and they have to come up with a number of them equal to the number of players including the DM and themselves. So if you have a party of 5, each player is going to come up with 6. But, because they are rumours, somewhere around 1/3 or 1/4 of those rumours that they come up with are going to be false. The rest of them are going to be true things based on their backstories, but these are things that might sound true, but aren't. Then all of those rumours get shuffled up and handed out to each of the other players. Which, keep in mind, means that there is a possibility that none of the other characters will get a lie, but they all know that the thing they receive might be a lie. So they don't know whether they're reading something true or not, but the idea is that it has this interesting sort of subliminal influence on how they interact with each other. You really want these rumours to be things that encourage opportunities for poking and prodding into each other's backstories. One of my players, her character is like the edgy rogue archetype, and one of her rumors that was false is that she's on the run because she assassinated some important political person. And I read that and I was like, this is perfect, because based on what they know of her character, everyone would believe that. Lurkland left a couple of house rules. One of those was doubling strength modifiers on two-handed weapon damage. They say it makes melee fighters scary so they don't get as left in the dust by magic users as the levels go up, and they say that it also applies to monsters, making giants even more scary. They also leave a side note that for them, they make sure that melee attacks from huge or larger creatures have area of effects. Oh no, the tautologies. Because how is the dragon only hitting one person, they say. And that to me just sounds like fun. I kind of like this idea because to me it seemingly, having not tried it, seemingly reduces the supremacy of dexterity a little. Or it doesn't reduce the actual supremacy of dexterity as a stat, but it might reduce the deficit a little bit, giving you a reason within the physical stats to choose strength over dex. I would be interested to see, to me it seems like there might be a little bit of a danger zone with regard to paladins, just because they are likely to be using two-handed weapons, but they also are spellcasters. So I don't know whether that's gonna lead to paladins just being all powerful. But I do think that the idea is very interesting and bears more thought, more thinking in the think tank. It's really hard to say. Thieven Steelberg, which is a very appropriate name for the subject matter. Thieven Steelberg dropped in, shields shall be splintered is what they call it. This is another one that I've seen out and about in different places, but they say that a PC wielding a shield can choose to sacrifice that shield to avoid damage. So the shield is destroyed, but you avoid the damage. And I've seen variations on it where you sacrifice the shield in order to negate a critical hit, so it just becomes a normal hit. Or I've seen versions where it means that you take half damage, things like that. But I do like the cinematic nature of it. This one, someone somewhere suggested this, but I don't think it was on my Stuff I've Stolen video. I think it was on either a more recent video or maybe they mentioned it on Twitter. If it's you, please let me know. Please let me know in the comments, because it's in there. It's wormed its way into my brain, and you deserve the credit. But they basically said, if I'm remembering correctly, they basically said that for characters who are below either 3rd level or 5th level, all characters below that level get bonus hit points, something like 10 bonus hit points, just to give them a little bit more meat in those very deadly, very dangerous early stages. And then once they pass that level threshold, whether it be 3rd or 5th level, they start paying it back in installments. So when they roll for health at every level up, they can go, oh, well, I rolled well this time, I'm gonna put 3 of those health points towards paying back my debt instead of increasing by that amount. You're giving them a hit point loan, a little startup capital. That's all. To me, that sounds very friendly, particularly if you've got a bunch of new players and they all want to play spellcasters, and so none of them have any hit points. This just seems like a friendly way of handling that. Spoon Dragon! Ahaha! Now this is one I loved reading Spoon Dragon's linguistics concept. Basically, they were pointing out that 5e and, tabletop RPGs in general, you either know a language or you don't know a language. It's all or nothing, which isn't how language really works in the real world. And as a result, it becomes fairly uninteresting, because it's either, well, does anyone speak Infernal? Yes? Okay, great. Well, he said this. Does anyone know Primordial? No? Oh, well, you can't actually read the riddle. Sorry. And so Spoon Dragon sort of transformed it into a percentile system, which is fun. Any chance to work in less common types of roles, like percentile roles, for me, I love those. And I loved it so much, I took this concept and I tweaked it, and I made my own little version of this house rule. I have not gotten to use it yet. I have yet to find a group of players who are really eager to make languages harder, particularly because I guess it does come across as one of those quite bureaucratic house rules. But someday I'll find people who want to play with just that teensy little bit more gritty realism, sans the gritty, because to me it sounds fun. Basically how my version of this works is that at game start you can have up to 2 languages where you are fluent at 100%. You grew up speaking these languages. It is not race locked. It has always bugged me that language proficiencies are so closely tied to your race. Because what if you want a character, what if your character is Carrot from Discworld? And sure, you are human, you have the stats of a human, but you were raised by dwarves, so really you should speak Dwarvish. So I haven't got them race locked. I would just, make it make sense with your character background. But yeah, maximum 2 languages at 100% at game start. You can have more language proficiencies from the get-go, but any after these first 2 start stepping down at ranked intervals. So 100, 100, 80, 70, 60, so on and so forth until you get to 30%, and then every language after that you start the game with is at 30%. So 30, 30, 30. I had to build that in because it is possible to build a character that starts the game with 11 language proficiencies. Something crazy like that. That is not the actual number. But it is, whatever it is, it's a very high number. Anytime within the game that you encounter a language that you are less than 100% fluent with, you have to roll D percentile and roll under your fluency level. So if you are 60% fluent in Draconic and this dragon's talking at you, you want to roll a 49, not an 82. If you roll under your fluency level, then you can accurately translate what's being said. If you pick up a new language during play at later levels, those languages that you pick up start at 20% fluency and you have to build it up from there. Every time your character levels up, you can choose a language that increases in fluency by 5%. So you just get a little bit better over time. It's really, I don't want people to make the mistake that it's about the game being realistic. That's not what I'm trying to do at any point. I'm not aiming for simulation. I'm aiming for truthiness. It's like Colville always uses the word verisimilitude, and I think some people misinterpret that to mean, oh, the game has to be realistic. That's not what that means. Verisimilitude isn't simulated reality. Verisimilitude is something that it feels true. I have many thoughts about this. They're based on Aristotle quotes. We won't get into it right now. But yeah, I like living in that zone of truthiness, which is why I like the idea of something that takes a real challenge and keeps the challenge real while also abstracting it. and adding some level of simplicity. And then finally, this is one of my own that I made up on the fly on Twitter that I actually really like, and so I'm throwing it at you now. For the people who didn't see it, coming at ya. It does not really have a name, but at the moment I've given it the working title Team Instinct. Partly because it's the most accurate name of the ones that have been devised thus far, and partly because I just think it's funny because it's the name of one of the teams from Pokemon Go. We see people often talking about how do we encourage players to sort out what they're gonna do on their turn before their turn arrives. You know, you get to the wizard's turn and they're like, oh wait, what's happening? What's going on? What's this guy doing? And they haven't sorted out their spells and all those things. And a lot of people find that frustrating, and that's fair. But then I was thinking about it and I thought maybe the best way to make sure that players know what they're doing on their turn would be to let players figure out what they're gonna do on their turn. I honestly think a big part of this problem that doesn't get touched on as often is the fact that the game stops right before combat, right? You're playing, roleplay, roll for initiative, and then suddenly everyone has to stop. They do this roll that only happens at this particular time, so it's this weird little transitional phase. It takes a while, they're all reacting to their rolls, they're chattering amongst each other, you're asking for the numbers, you're making your list, you're prepping the combat. There's this pause, this lull, that gives your players room to fall out of the headspace of the game. And then they have to build back into it, which is tricky as well when you've gone from one sort of style of play in the roleplay zone into combat. So it's a really tricky, it's a hard switch. I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about, you can't see it right now, but I'm doing a yoga pose that I think is called the mountain or something. I'm so zen. Whoa. I got too cocky. You know in video games when you get bullet time, or in the Robert Downey Sherlock Holmes movies when he's about to fight someone and he like thinks it through and he's like, oh, and then I'll hit him here, and then I'll do the thing to his eardrum or whatever, and then blah blah blah. And then it plays out the fight in like real time. Why not do something like that in your RPG? The idea being that your players, that this party of adventurers have been spending so much time together, they fight together so often, that they don't really need to talk about what they're going to do to know how to divvy up the fight ahead of them. It's that little heroic quality of like, oh, well, I'm gonna handle this guy, you handle that guy. Give your players a couple minutes, 3 minutes tops, to just look at the battlefield, take in the combatants, the opponents, and let them strategize amongst themselves. Let them talk about what each of them is gonna do. Giving these few minutes of strategic discussion to your players gives you time to prep your combat, and B, keeps your players thinking within the zone of the game, with the added benefit, of course, of having an idea of what they want to do when their turn comes around. Really broad strokes of like, you know, you target this person, I'll target this person. And even 3 minutes, I think you'll find, will pass very, very quickly. If you're worried about it, you can limit it to 1 minute even. Just because then the players are more likely to be aware of what everyone is doing, and probably more likely to focus on what everyone is doing as well. They'll be paying attention to what opponents are doing. You know, they'll each want to keep tabs of the person they're meant to be going after. Another couple of interesting side effects I think you might find happening would be that when you drop a dramatic change in the middle of combat, you know, a bullet rips up out of the ground, this twist that you had planned, it'll have a bigger effect because suddenly they have to account for this thing that wasn't accounted for in their original strategy. Or for example, you might, if you do this at the start of every ordinary combat, maybe when you hit a surprise round in combat, if there's an ambush, you don't give your players time to strategize. And suddenly that plays into the feeling of chaos in amongst this surprise combat, because where they're usually acting as a well-oiled machine, suddenly they're all kind of getting in each other's way. Some enemies don't have anyone marking them, things like that. I personally really like the idea. Not to toot my own horn, just saying. So those are some ideas. I think that they're worth stealing. I hope you found 1 or 2 of them worth stealing yourself. Please, please do leave your own house rules or house rules that you've stolen in the comments below. It was so fun reading through them last time. We got so many great comments. And there are so many new peeps here now. There's so many more of you. So we're gonna have a whole new brain sharing party. You know, this is, it's the, you give a little, you take a little, all that good stuff. Apart from that, I do believe that's it. I'm done. Email this to your grandma, and I'll see you some other time. I bet I've forgotten something. Better have. Ooh, it's Halloween! It's the Halloween month! Ooh.